You are here because you're interested in reducing your lawn. And this is probably because you're getting sick of mowing. Lawns are difficult to maintain, and there's this growing movement toward reducing the size of lawns and yards or even completely eliminating them, and this is a really good thing. However, sometimes people will inadvertently increase the maintenance of their yard when they remove their lawns. There is a little bit of strategy to this, and in this video I'm going to share some of the common mistakes that people make when reducing their lawn that can increase maintenance. One thing that I want to premise is that even though removing and reducing lawn may be a little bit more complex than you may expect, it is still very possible to reduce lawn and reduce maintenance in your yard, and the benefits are immense. As of a study done in 2005, lawn was the largest irrigated crop in the United States. Not the largest crop, but the largest irrigated crop. And I don't know, it's been a few years, I don't know how that data has changed since then, but that's still a lot of irrigation for something that really doesn't sustain anything, doesn't sustain life, doesn't sustain wildlife, doesn't sustain people, and is mostly just used for aesthetic purposes. There's also the runoff caused by the improper use of fertilizers or other lawn care chemicals. There's the time and the money spent on mowing. There's the pollution that's caused by gas-powered lawn equipment. The list goes on and on. And if you are someone who loves their lawn, please don't be offended by this video. I'm not a lawn hater. I just believe in balance. There are some people I think that take it a little bit too far. They'll add, put way too much fertilizer on their lawn, and then that's contributing to a bigger problem. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, lawns are probably not like the biggest problem that humanity is facing right now. And there are a lot of really great ecological lawn practices out there. But that's a topic for another video. I do believe in this big concept of a lot of tiny efforts in the right direction that add up to this magnified positive impact. So let's replace our lawn with plants and other things. That was a very long-winded intro to this video, which is about reducing maintenance when you're reducing your lawn, because this requires a little bit more strategy than you might expect. Let's start talking about some common mistakes. So I'm going to share the first 3 mistakes kind of all at once because they all kind of relate to each other. So number 1 is forgetting to mulch. Number 2 is letting the weeds take over. And number 3 is not being mentally prepared for the amount of investment of time and energy that it's going to take up front that will pay off later. Oftentimes people will opt to remove this really big lawn all at once and replace it with this really big garden all at once. But this is not necessarily a reduction in maintenance at first. And let me emphasize that it's at first. This is for a couple of reasons. You have to cover the soil right away with mulch so that the weeds don't get established, and young plants take a little bit of time and effort and irrigation to get established before they start preventing weeds, and before you end up with this ecosystem that's a lot less maintenance than a lawn. However you choose to remove lawn, the first thing that you should do is amend the soil if you're going to be planting new things in this space. Usually compost is the best way to amend your soil, but you should consider doing a soil test. It's pretty easy to do that so that you can figure out exactly what your soil needs for your future plantings. In general, this involves adding a little bit of compost to your soil. And after that, you have to cover the soil immediately with mulch. The soil needs to be covered immediately because if you don't cover it with mulch, nature will cover it with weeds. At first, mulching is going to feel a little bit overwhelming because this first application of mulch needs to be a few inches deep for it to be effective. This means that this first initial mulching after you remove lawn and amend the soil will cost the most and take the most time. You will also need to reapply a thin layer of mulch periodically every few years, and the frequency kind of depends on what mulching material you use. This does sound like a lot, but as the mulch kind of settles in and your plants become established and start to take up space, you will need to apply mulch and spend time weeding less and less. Remember that compost is not mulch. Mulch can include bark dust, bark nuggets, arborist chips, wood chips, hazelnut shells, the list goes on. Also, no amount of mulch is going to prevent weeds entirely, but if you have enough mulch right away, you prevent that first flush of weeds from germinating. What'll happen is you'll have a few weeds pop up here and there, and that'll be the normal maintenance for a little while. Eventually, as your mulch is starting to settle in, decompose, you'll start to see this uptick in weed germination and this uptick in maintenance, and it'll hit this point where you're like, yeah, it's time to reapply another inch of mulch across the space. And eventually, as plants become established, you will need to apply less mulch. There will be fewer weeds because the plants in your garden are going to be outcompeting the weeds a little bit. And this layer of mulch will kind of like just prevent any weed seeds, anything that blows in will germinate germinate, but like anything that's underneath the mulch isn't going to germinate, if that makes sense, once that mulch gets settled in and established a little bit. And you're probably beginning to notice at this point how this approach can kind of catch people off guard. They think, oh, we can just take out this lawn and we'll put in plants and it'll be less work. But at first, you're going to be replacing this time that you spend mulching, or mowing and fertilizing your lawn and irrigating your lawn as well and taking care of that with this time that you're going to spend. You're going to spend money on mulch, you're going to spend time pulling weeds out, spreading mulch, and irrigating plants until they're established. But eventually, it's going to pay off because you'll have this established landscape. You may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed at this point in the video, but stick with me. I'm going to start talking about plants and it's going to get a little bit easier from here on out. In summary, these are the first 3 common mistakes for getting to mulch, or the second one is letting the weeds take over by not mulching soon enough, by delaying the mulching, and then the third is just not being mentally prepared for this initial investment of time, energy, money that will pay off later on down the road. Let's move on to the common mistake number 4, planting the wrong plants. Plants that fill in quickly, compete with weeds, and that are generally pretty low maintenance are the best options for replacing lawn. Annual plants and herbaceous perennial plants tend to not be as good at this. So I tend to recommend to people, if you're replacing a big chunk of your lawn, try and lean toward shrubs and trees in your design as much as possible. Of course, a mix is okay, but this is just a general rule to lead you in the right direction. Also, some trees and shrubs are going to require a little bit more maintenance than others, so just do a little bit of research. You can learn more about selecting the right plant for the right place in my free mini course, which is linked in the description below. I created it just for this purpose because I want to empower you to be able to do your own plant research and make sure that you're selecting the right plant option for your yard. A common mistake number 5, is that people forget to focus on native plants. And native plants are great for replacing lawns because they generally get to be pretty big, they're really good at competing with weed species, they're a little bit more affordable than other landscape plants typically, and they're adapted, of course, to our local climate, to our local region, which means that once they're established, they're going to adapt better to the weather patterns in your area. When it comes to native plants, also consider planting like a corner of your yard as like this wild space. Establish some native plants, let things get a little bit bigger, and it'll just kind of maybe eat up a corner of your yard. But this is really great wildlife habitat, really low maintenance if you plant plants kind of densely in there so that they can overlap and create a little bit of a thicket. I know that some people, if they're overwhelmed with like the scale of the lawn removal project or the scale of their landscaping project in general, having this like low maintenance wild zone in their property is a really helpful thing. Be sure though that you research the right native plant because not all native plants will be acclimated to the conditions that are your lawn. They might be good in your region, but they might want to grow on top of a mountain in your region as opposed to in your lawn that gets pretty soggy in the winters. Just an example. There are a lot of different native plants. Again, be sure to just do your plant homework. Mistake number 6 is a little bit more controversial, but I don't recommend to people to, when I did landscape design work, I would not recommend to my landscape design clients that they remove a large section of lawn and replace it entirely with this short, tiny ground cover. There are a lot of these really short plants that are pretty acclimated to being walked on, but I find that in general, if you pull out this large section of lawn, you amend the soil, replace it with mulch, and then you plant dozens or even like hundreds of these little ground covers in, it can take them so long to get established that you'll end up with a lot of weed competition before you'll spend a lot of extra time weeding, a lot of extra time mulching before this ground cover can get established. I think that in small areas or small sections of lawn that you're replacing, these plants can be really effective and delightful. For example, in between pavers in a pathway, or maybe alongside your driveway, or even like in between other plants that you have established to replace your lawn. But in general, if you're replacing this really large area with ground cover, it can be done, but it does take a lot of work. And mistake number 7 is to entirely discount the idea of having some sort of eco-turf or basically fake grass in your landscape. There are some types of eco-turf or like astroturf or fake grass essentially that are designed to look a little bit less like neon green. There's been times when I walk by a patch of grass and I'm like, that lawn looks really good, but then I look a little bit closer and it's actually not real grass. So this can be a great option if you want a little bit of grass in your design, you don't want to deal with the maintenance, or you want somewhere for your pet to go to the bathroom, for example, just don't entirely discount it if you're like on the fence about removing your lawn now that you're learning more about this. Consider that as a possibility. In my opinion, the biggest mistake, mistake number 8, that people make when they're reducing or removing their lawn is that they don't make a really good plan before they get started. Instead of going from 100% lawn to 100% garden, what are some other things that you can do to reduce the maintenance of your space, maybe in steps, so that you don't have this big, overwhelming lawn removal project? For instance, just consider what you want to do with your space more. Do you want to have a little bit of a patio space? Do you want to have paths that meander through the landscape that maybe could be a different material than the rest of the garden, be a little bit less maintenance? Maybe you could create an area for your kids to play, something like that. When you make this landscape design plan, you can also break down your lawn reduction or removal project into bite-sized pieces so it's a little bit less overwhelming. Having a really good landscape design and plan for reducing or eliminating your lawn can really make the project a lot more manageable and lead to you being able to use your space more than you ever could before. Right now I'm working on an online course that will teach people how to create their own landscape design, how to be their own landscape designer, and will kind of guide people through the process of redesigning their front yard or backyard. Right now it's only a wait list, so if you're interested in this, please sign up, and please also tell me what you'd like to learn in this course. I would love to hear from you. And maybe if you're watching this video in the future, this course already exists, but regardless, there'll be a link in the description below this video. In summary, there's no like super fast, easy way to reduce or eliminate your lawn, but I hope that the tips in this video will help you be more successful and maybe even inspire some ideas you didn't have before. And if you find the idea of removing your lawn a little bit overwhelming after watching this video, I hope you don't. But if you do, consider looking into some of the more ecological lawn maintenance practices that are out there. I'm not personally an expert in this yet. I have a lot to learn, but if you're interested in seeing a video on this, please let me know in the comments below. I'll do some research and put something together. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm at Garden Project Academy on most platforms. I also have a newsletter, so you can sign up at gardenprojectacademy.com/newsletter, and there's a link to that in the description below. I also have my free mini course on how to choose the perfect plant and an upcoming course that'll help you with your landscape design project. Let me know in the comments below what other videos you'd like to see, and thank you so much for watching.